On the day that my friend and I went searching for the Catawanga, I lay in a field of cotton-spun dandelions and roasted in the evil gleam of the sun. It was one of the dog days of summer, when all the shadows are golden and the days never end. It just runs languidly onward like a paint smear. The sky was pristine blue of a hydrangea flower, without a cloud in sight. Every so often, Elliot would leap up excitedly, claiming he could see a cloud forming, but it was always a plane or a trick of the light or a runaway dandelion waltzing through the air. Chris grabbed Elliot's ankle as he went to jump up again and shoved him back onto the grass. "There's no goddamn clouds." "Language?" Elliot looked mildly offended. Chris snorted. He was a football player through and through, with huge shoulders and a temper to match. So I quickly got up in the hopes of heading off a confrontation. "I'm bored. Let's go play catch or something." Chris started to agree, but paused. A dangerous light came into his eyes, and I was immediately afraid. According to Chris, his ideas were brilliant. According to literally anyone else, they were insane. Like the time he'd suspended the school weeb, Peter, from a tree branch to see if the squirrels would eat him. Peter had hung him there like an overweight flag for 6 hours. "Have you guys heard of the Catawanga?" He stared straight at Elliot as he said it. "I heard that it lurks in the old Fairground and eats bad kids who wander off. It's got the eyes of a snake, and it ties the bones of its victims into its fur. Little Willie's cousin saw it, and he said it has claws like... Chris fumbled for the right words. "Knives?" I suggested. "Yeah, like knives. There's no such thing. It's probably some animal." Elliot didn't sound very sure of himself, though. Of course, I knew about the Catawanga. Everybody in town knew about it. The stories were many and conflicting. In some, it was a great dragon who hoarded the skulls of children and only brought them out during rainy nights to admire them in the light of the moon. In others, the Catawanga was a great man-beast abandoned by his family, bitter and afraid of the world. But always, it lived in the abandoned fairground, and always, it was very, very hungry. In my town's heyday, people came from all over the world to see the famous Grenadine Circus, open all year round and fun for the whole family. But that was a long time ago. What I knew about the circus came from the old geezers clustered around the creaky folding tables, telling stories about their youth. Everyone knew that half those stories were made up, and the other half, well, they might as well be. But I had always been fascinated by the circus. Or rather, I was fascinated by the way all the adults treated it. The Catawanga was not regarded as one of the harmless legends for the little kids to tell when they were warm and safe around the campfire. To my parents, to the parents of all the other kids that I knew, the Catawanga was real, and the circus was to be avoided at all costs. "The Catawanga isn't real," Elliot said again, more firmly. "Probably everyone freaked out about a cougar or a tiger or a really hairy guy." "We don't get those around here," I hesitated. "Well, we do get hairy people, but I've never seen any predators bigger than that ugly babysitter of yours." The last remark was directed at Chris. "Right, everybody shut up. I'm going to the fairground, and y'all are chicken if you don't come." Under the dire threat of being called a chicken, Elliot and I followed Chris as he confidently strolled away. My town was given a name by the 20-somethings who lived there, the ones who were too old to be satisfied with the tiny lives they lived here, but too young to accept that big lives were meant for big kids born in big cities far away from people that believed in Catawangas. The 20-somethings called my town Satan's Soul because it was so small. My friends and I made it to the fairground in less than 10 minutes. Vines twined up the poles that held up a sign which proudly proclaimed Grenadine Circus. It was barely recognizable. It had decaying wooden things that might once have been stalls, ground covered in leaves that crunched at every step, and anthills. Lots and lots of anthills. Chris smacked his meaty palms together. "Let's go hunt us some Catawanga meat." Elliot rolled his eyes. We walked into the circus together, because when we actually got there, Chris didn't seem all that keen to go first. Elliot trailed his fingers over a row of half-submerged cages. I wonder where all the animals went when the circus shut down. There was a crashing sound to the side. Elliot and I looked over to see a half-exposed basement with a ladder leading down into it. Chris moaned at the bottom. I rushed up, sliding down the ladder, and grabbed at Chris. "Dude, are you all right?" He started crying, great sobbing gasps that gradually transformed into hysterical laughter. You should have seen your face." Chris stood up and dusted himself off, pleased at his prank. I sighed and turned to leave, but growls from the back of the room stopped me. "It's probably just the wind." "It's just the wind," I said, doing my best to sound sure. But nails scraped along stone, undermining my words. "That's it. I'm out." Chris retreated up the ladder. "Chicken," Elliot yelled at his back. "The Catawanga isn't real." The growls got louder. "The Catawanga isn't real." Elliot's face was pale. "I'm not leaving. I'm not a chicken." I tried to pull Elliot away, but he stood his ground. "The Catawanga isn't real," Elliot screamed into the black of the room, as if he could wish the shadowy shape moving at the back of the room into non-existence. "The Catawanga isn't real, and we don't get predators here, and you aren't allowed to be real." He bellowed the words out as if some tiny, important thing was about to be broken, and that was the last thing he could ever say. I glanced at the shape. It was just a lump of shadows in the corner. I grabbed Elliot's arm and decided I didn't want to see it move. I talked to him calmly, projecting what I didn't feel. "Elliot, come on, let's go. It'll be okay, Elliot. We have to leave now." Growls bubbled up from behind me. "Elliot, move!" Elliot's face went pale. He pointed over my shoulder with one trembling finger. The bear was rather pathetic. It lunged for us, but only made it halfway, banging its nose against the ground and whimpering like a petulant child. The bear's fur was falling out in patches. Its eyes were covered with milky white film, and it sniffed the air, trying to find its dinner. All those years of being endlessly crammed onto bicycles and paraded around like an oversized dog, followed by years alone in the fairground, had taken their toll on the creature. Despite that, it was very big and very obviously hungry. "But we don't get bears here," I said stupidly. "I told you," Elliot whispered. "I asked what happened to the circus animals, and now we know. I told you so." I grabbed Elliot by the arm and pulled him out of the basement. As we scrambled up the ladder, I glanced back. The last thing I saw was the faded red collar around the bear's neck, the last remnant of the Grenadine circus. Elliot and I met Chris by the edge of the grounds and told him about the bear. I guess the Catawanga isn't real, just some dumb kids making up stories about a bear. He sounded disappointed, even though he had run away from the bear like he had bees in his pants. Yeah, I guess. I was relieved, though. Something moved in the trees. The wind died down suddenly, and I could just barely hear a scraping that sounded like long, long claws sliding across concrete. The sound got louder and louder, built until I could feel the vibrations in my chest. There was a figure inside the gate, large and bulbous, with limbs protruding at seemingly random angles. One of those limbs held a limp hunk of meat that still had a red collar around its neck. It didn't have a face, but something about the way it lounged there made it seem undeniably smug. Chris wasn't the only one who ran away that time. I never saw the Catawanga again, but as soon as I turned 18, I moved away with no plans and no money. Elliot left too, but Chris stayed. He'd always been stubborn like that. On my 20th birthday, he was found headless just outside the fairgrounds. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. I hope you enjoyed the works of Manta Shrimp 47, an up-and-comer on Reddit. He's got some other great stories that I'll likely fall back on, and he's generously given me his permission to read his work, so you can look forward to more of him in the future. let's go ahead and thank our patrons before we sign off. Thanks to Leslie Lou Riddle and Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. Thanks to Xaronana for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributor. And thanks to Glen Jenkins for being our Ghostwriter tier contributor. If you would like to support the show, come on down to Patreon. For just $5 a month, you can have your name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I do. Patrons also get their videos a day early, so you can experience your Wednesday and Friday videos on Tuesday and Thursday, respectively. I have a new compilation coming out in July, so if you'd like to get caught up, follow my link in the comments to Amazon. Or, like Xaronana, you can always sign up to my Ghostly Reader tier, and you get a book signed in your mailbox when I put them out. I can't wait to see more patrons come in as the new books roll out. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.